I believe, and you can just kind of clarify this, who has control of the city manager's job and his, you know, and the job that he's doing? Who can, well, let's just say who can hire or fire the city manager?
The city manager reports to our 5-member council. We have a 5-member council. We have a mayor. We have 4 council districts. So there are 5 of us. We collectively appoint and unappoint the city manager. So if the question is who can hire and who can fire the city manager, the city council can, but not individually. We have to do it collectively. When we hired our city manager, we hired him collectively. And so any action that we take for the city manager or against the city manager or whatever that would look like, if we gave him a raise, if we terminated him, or if we suspended him, if we gave him a new title or a new responsibility, that happens collectively in a public meeting by the entire city council. So not one council person can't hire or fire anybody. It has to be done collectively by our entire council.
Opening the door, man. Okay. All right. So, one other thing that's come up in analyzing, I guess the government in this is, the demographics and, some people have pointed to the police force. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, it's 30 some odd police officers in the Marque. And the, racial demographic is, I believe, 40% or somewhere near there, African American in the Marque. But, excuse me, but yet it's only 2 black police officers. So can you talk about, the process if the community, came together and said, this is not something that we want. We want to have our police department look a little bit different. Is that something that can be done through community? I say community demands or community action. If people spoke up and said, "Hey, we want our police department to look like, X, Y, and Z." How would something like that happen? So I guess there's kind of 2 things there.
Yeah. Well, we have to always remember that the city government is a function of its citizens. And what that means is the city government is here designed to serve the needs of its citizens. And so that means that any and every part of our city government can be shaped by its citizens. And so I said all of that to say the community can desire the police department to act, to respond, and to look however the community wishes the police department to act, and to respond, and to look. And what that looks like is a group of community partners from every part of our community. And I think sometimes we have to remember that our community is made up of neighborhoods that are around Lake Road, streets like Bellevue and Jackson Street, Purtle Street, but our community is also made up of members that live in Westwood Circle, Delaney Cove. There are members of our community that live in Omega Bay. Some of them live off of Main Street. And so our community has very different communities, and we have a tremendous amount of diversity. And so in order for our police department to be shaped and crafted by our community, we have to invite every aspect of our community to come in and take part. And so what that would look like a work group being appointed by perhaps our city council, coming together from various parts of our community, meeting each other over a table like we're doing, having those hard conversations, telling those hard truths, but speaking to those issues of law enforcement and policing that affect the different areas of our community. And from there, once we get that understanding and that information, from there we can begin to build a police department that not only is reflective of the community, but a police department that is now responsive to the community, and not just one aspect of our community, but our community from an entire perspective. And so if we're willing to do the hard work, and we're willing to work with one another, we can have tremendous success in shaping our police department in ways that our community would be proud.
Okay. I also wanted to just kind of touch on body cam footage. And we just talked about this here, but we've talked about this previously. I just wanted to, get your, what you know about the body cams, the history of body cams here in Lamar. I know, you told me that, you were instrumental in that. Just kind of talk about.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things that we've been able to do in partnership with the police department, and I'd like to say in partnership with them, because I honestly can say in these areas that I'm about to mention, they have been willing partners. But I have been able, with the support of my colleagues on council, to lead our council in being one of the first municipalities in this county to actually wear body cameras. I don't believe that we were the first, but I believe perhaps we were in the top 2 or 3. And so, for example, we've been wearing body cameras for, and don't quote me on this, but for the better part of 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe a little shorter, maybe a little longer. At least 5 to 6 years, maybe 8 to 9. I just read in the newspaper the other day that League City is investing 1.3 or 1.2 or 1.3 million dollars for the purchase of body cams for their police department. This is 2020. And so we were doing this back in the earlier parts of this decade, and I was able to lead our council with their support, tremendous support, to make that investment and to adopt those policies. And so when the community began to cry out for the body camera, I want us to understand that our police department, through the leadership of this council, have been being proactive with body camera footage for years. Secondly, one of the things that we have had in the past, and one of the things that I know the city manager is working on, is restoring this idea of community policing. And that was the second thing that I was able to work with the council and lead the council into adopting with a previous police chief. And community policing simply says that our police officers get out into the neighborhoods, and they meet the neighbors, and they understand the concerns of the community. They meet the business owners. They start communication and dialogue in the hopes that initial investment in prevention would pay dividends in the lowering of crime, because crimes are prevented through information. Crimes are prosecuted more successfully through information and evidence. And so this concept and this idea of community policing will allow for that dialogue and that communication, and it will also allow for the building of trust. And I believe that the more any community is able to trust the law enforcement of that community, the better that relationship will be. And so those are just 2 things that we were able to work with the council on. And that suggests that we have a council that is passionate about having the best police force that we possibly can, and a council that's passionate about having a community that's proud of the police force. And so that takes work. It doesn't always, it's not going to always look the way that we want things to look as a council. And certainly there are going to be some obstacles, and there are going to be some things that we have to experience. But I believe that the council that I'm a part of, that our first priority is to make sure that Lamarck is the best city that Lamarck can be for her citizens. And the first priority of any municipality as it relates to her citizenry is to keep the citizenry safe. And if that's the first priority of any municipality is to keep the citizenry safe, then the first priority in keeping the citizenry safe is making sure that you have a qualified, effective, and efficient police force. And that is the will of the council in which I serve. And so long as that's our will, as we move through that endeavor, we are going to become better and better as time goes by.
And can you talk a bit about, let's go timeline. How long have you been involved in city government?
About 17 years.
Okay. How long, and I know they're not here, but how long has the city manager been city manager here?
Roughly about 2 years.
Okay. And how long has the police chief been police chief here?
I want to say maybe 5 years, somewhere in there. He's been a member of our department for 20 plus years, but I believe somewhere in the 5-year range he's been a police chief.
Okay. And the officer involved in this was hired when?
That I don't know.
2014, that's what I heard, or something like that.
That I don't. I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
Yeah, but I guess it seems like, and it's just, correct me if I'm wrong, you may not know, but he was here before the police chief and the current city manager. This officer, Officer Santos, was on the force before the police chief and the city manager. So I say that to say they didn't hire him. The people that are in these positions now, did they hire him or no?
I can't answer that, Isaac, because but that would be something that I would refer to the city manager, simply because obviously there's an investigation, and obviously, as we said before, we are not allowed to have any significant commentary on personnel in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and I think whoever's interested in it, I think you can do the legwork on your own and find that out. But I think that that may be fairly important in just when you're analyzing the big picture, because I think a lot of people are really looking to figure out what the next steps are in terms of what they can do, or who who is it in this process that may need to go on a different type of look in the history. So I mean, for the most part, I think that's pretty much everything that I had.
Let me say this, Isaac, because you brought up something that was important: timelines and processes. When you have an officer-involved shooting, the entity involved cannot investigate herself. So the Lamarck Police Department is not investigating this incident. The Galveston Sheriff's Department is, and they will work with the Galveston County District Attorney's Office. We have no authority over that investigation. We can't tip it or shift it in any way, shape, or form. The sheriff's department doesn't tell us anything. They don't have to tell us anything. We don't want them to tell us anything. The district attorney's office doesn't have to tell us anything. We don't want them to tell us anything. And so this part of this process is solely in their hands. And so some would say trust the process, but then I understand that that makes some people feel uncomfortable. There are people in our community, and I do understand why. There are people in our community that feel as though they can't trust the process. And what I'd like to say to them is, I understand that, but in fact we are still in the process. And we have no other option at this point than to wait for this process, this investigation in which we have no control over, to be completed. But when I encourage people to trust the process, I'm encouraging them to trust more than just the process, the criminal investigative portion of this process. Many people would think that when you say trust the process, you're suggesting to them that they trust the criminal investigative portion of this process. And I'm suggesting that we in our community trust the entire process. And so at some point, this criminal investigative inquiry will be over. And there will be either charges filed or there will be charges not filed. I don't have any idea what that will look like. And that's not any of my business to know that at this point. But whatever happens, then that information will be dispersed throughout the community. And that information will then return into the hands of the elected officials of the city of Lamar. And that information will be compiled with other information that we can gather. Information from members of our community, from all over our community. From Banana Street to Florence Street, from Florence Street to McKinney Street, from McKinney Street on over out to Delaney. Every member of our community will take part in understanding and evaluating this information. And at that point, the city of Lamar will have an opportunity to understand whether or not we feel that we ought to hold ourselves accountable. And that will be this city council reviewing information and sharing information with the community. That will be the community reviewing information and sharing concerns and opinions with the council. And together, the council and the community, and let's not forget the law enforcement community as well, the council, the community at large, the law enforcement community, will be able to review this information and we'll be able to understand this information so that we can implement plans and policies and procedures to build a better police department. I'm not suggesting that our police department is bad in any way. What I am suggesting is it's always a good thing to build better. And so when I say to us, trust the process, what I'm saying to us is trust and understand if one part or another part of this process disappoints you, that there's still avenues in this process that we can seek to look down to make sure that the city of Lamarck has all the information that she needs to hold herself accountable and to move forward in a positive way. And I want people to understand that at the end of the day, we as a community are going to digest what happened in our community, and we as a community are going to be able to move forward together, speaking and working and talking and moving and deciding what's best for our community. And that's what I have trust in. That's what I have faith in. And I want the rest of the community to understand and have faith in the fact that at some point their voices are going to be fully heard. At some point, everything that the community is feeling in every part of our community, we're not just talking about one street. I think sometimes that's where we get off track. But we have to listen to every part of our community. So we look forward to the day that the council can listen to every part of the community to understand how we need to work with our police department, because nobody wants to be violated in our city. Nobody wants to be the victim of crime in our city. So we know that our police department is needed. We understand that. We encourage that. But the community can come together to try to help them understand what they need to do to be more responsive to the community. And that's a good thing.
And last thing, this just kind of came up as we were talking. When it comes to, and we kind of jumping back a bit to the release of the body cam footage, I hear, the investigation is with the county. Yet, on the other hand, I know that the footage was released after the investigation was with the county. So how does that work? How is it that, part of it is investigation, and we can't deal with that, but yet the city, the body cam footage was released or put into the public domain, I believe, by the city.
I would ask you to verify this with the city manager, but I believe that when an investigation is ongoing, when they reach certain stages of the investigation, then there's a communication with the police department that perhaps they may say, this part of what we've investigated, we're through that part, so you can release this part. And so ultimately, the county has control over what's released and what's not released. And when they move through their investigation, perhaps at times, based on what's best for the public good, the community was in such outrage. Perhaps the body cam footage needed to be released. Again, verify that with the city manager. But I believe that that's what we are dealing with. I believe that perhaps the investigation went past that part, and that made it okay for the city, in the public's interest, to release it at that particular time versus earlier, when perhaps maybe they were looking at that part of the evidence earlier. Again, I'm not an attorney. That's why I'm saying I refer you to Mr. Jackson to see what that process looked like. I may be a bit mistaken, but that was my understanding of that contemplation.
All right. Last thing, there's been talk of, I think on a national level, a national registry. I guess I'll go ahead and ask that. Is something like this something that you support? And on the other side of that, if the national registry is something that happens, or not, is it something that the city of Lamarque, with the input of the citizens, can shape on a smaller level? I guess the example would be if the city says that we don't want police officers that have had this type of reprimand on their records to work for the police police department. Is even that something that can be shaped by community input and working with the city government?
Two things. Number one, I think that any tool that we can develop and implement that will make sure that cities have the opportunity to recruit and to bring aboard the most qualified officers that we possibly can, I think that that's a positive. That could never hurt. And so if there was a national registry that would help us in that process, I would be certainly be in 100% support of it. The other part of your question was, can the community shape and craft some sort of prerequisites that the city would have to follow, or the police department, because the citizens are the city, that the police department would have to follow in hiring police officers. And I would say again, a city is made up of its citizens. A city is owned and operated by its citizens. And so the citizenry of a city has the power to shape every aspect of the city. And so if that citizenry said, for example, we wanted all of our police officers to have a Bachelor of Science degree, a city can do that. We can, as a community, place whatever qualifications we'd like to have on our officers, so long as they meet the basic minimum requires to be a law enforcement officer. So they cannot fall below the basic minimum requirements, but we can build in, as a community, any types of requirement that we can agree on as a community. So the answer is yes.
All right. Well, that's it for me. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but that's all I have.
Well, I just wanted to say, Isaac, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate this dialogue, and I'm glad that we had a chance to get this dialogue on camera, because my heart is broken because of what we've experienced as a community. I'm concerned about the pain that our community is going through. Again, I knew Josh personally. I know Josh's mom personally. I know Josh's family personally. We are all family. And so it's a tough time, I know, for the family. I know it's a tough time for the community, but I want folks to know it's a tough time for me as well. And I want people to remember it's a tough time for the good men and women that are in law enforcement, that pride themselves on being the best community servants that they can be. And if we can all gather and if we can all understand that, then I think that we have the foundation to move forward in a better way. But I also want to encourage anybody in the community that has any concerns about what we're experiencing, that have any questions, if they just want to vent, I'm here. I'm a community leader. That goes with the territory. I understand the people's concern. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to talk. I've had many conversations over lunch, in parking lots, at public parks, over the phone, over Zoom. As many people as I can have conversations with to understand the feelings of the community, to understand what we need to be looking at when this process returns back to our government, and I need your help. I need to know from members of our community exactly what we as a council need to be looking at as we move forward. We can't make our community a better place if we don't understand the needs of the community. And we can't understand the needs of the community if we don't have willing community members that are willing to sit down and have heart-to-heart talks with us about their experiences and what they would like to see moving forward. So again, if there's anybody out in our community that would like to talk to me, that like to meet with me, my door is always open. I'm willing to meet with you anywhere at any time, to share with you in your experiences and to try to share with you the heart that I have for what we are going through, and also the parts of the process that we can control after this investigation is completed. And so I just want to thank you again for sitting with me, for working with me, and for trying to help me to help us to make this community a better place.